Hello?
Hi, is this Randolph?
Yes, it is.
All right, well, let me do the official introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, we are very excited to welcome our first guest this evening. He is an actor who everyone affectionately remembers as Johnny Gage from the show Emergency, and we're very privileged to have him join us tonight. The one and only Mr. Randolph Mantooth. You're on the air live with Terry and Tiffany. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I'm so glad to get
you
on.
Thank you for that wonderful opening.
You're
Fantastic.
welcome.
It's not hard with somebody that's done the great things that you've done. Longtime fan of Emergency. I'm one of the original fans. The other host here is my daughter, and she's just now being introduced to Emergency. Do you find that a lot of younger people are starting to watch Emergency like through Netflix and so on?
Yeah, surprisingly enough. The show's been off the air for 35 years, and all of a sudden 6- and 7-year-old kids come up to me, and I'm sure that, you know, their parents bring them up, and I'm always a little embarrassed, and I always ask the parents not to do that, because I'm sure when they come up to me, they say privately to their parents, "This isn't Johnny Gage, this is Johnny Gage's dad." You know. So, but it is amazing to me that this show has lasted for as long as it has. I got to be honest with you, Kevin and I thought that, you know, we thought every year until about the 4th or the 5th year, we thought we were going to get canceled. So to find out that we not only didn't get canceled, that the show would have such a long life is just kind of very surprising, and I have to admit it's a little humbling.
Well, you want to know how you can gauge how popular a show is. I kind of made a joke about this, but if you think about it, it really is true. When a show is made into a cartoon series, and you guys were.
Yes, not one that I really enjoyed doing. However, nothing against the cartoon. It's just that when I'm not when Kevin and I were working like 24/7, 7 days a week, whenever the show would go down on hiatus, the last thing in the world we wanted to do was go work someplace else. So I would take off to the woods and go camping, and they found me up in, believe it or not, they found me all the way in Newfoundland, and said, "You have to come back and do this cartoon." Well, I was ready to strangle somebody. Come back and do a cartoon. I'm in the middle of a camping trip in Newfoundland.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, you've been talking about Kevin, of course, Kevin Ty, who played paramedic Roy DeSoto. Now, you're actually still friends today, right?
He's still my best friend. I just talked to him yesterday. He's in Shreveport, Louisiana, shooting a pilot called Salem.
Wow. You're looking forward to that.
He said, "Randy, they've got me here. They blacked out my teeth." Or he says, "I'm here with blacked out teeth. My hair is all scraggly, all down to my shoulders." And he said, "I've got this beard." And I said, "Oh, so you haven't been to makeup yet?"
Well, I'm sure that's just a joke. I haven't really seen what Kevin looks like, but I think that you've weathered the years quite well. And I think, it would be quite feasible if you guys, and I don't know, like, it has to be with the powers that be, but there is such a calling. We've been getting emails and tweets and everything. There's a big fan base out there that's wanting an emergency reunion. Has there ever been talk of doing that? Because I think you guys could still pull it off.
Yeah, no, Kevin and I swore that we would never do that. And, this idea has come up many, many times. And, we were approached, but Kevin and I, and I'll tell you why. One of the shows that I grew up with was the Andy Griffith Show. I always wanted Andy Griffith to be my dad.
Sure.
As a kid growing up, and I couldn't wait. This is about 10 years ago or so. They had the reunion show, and I saw Don Knotts, and I've worked with Don, and I love him. but I saw him. He looked so old, so frail, and there he was doing the same role he did before. And there was Andy Griffith doing the same role, and there was Opie and with no hair. And I never in my life got so depressed as I did watching that. And I turned to Kevin and I said, never, ever will I do this. Let this stay in everybody's memories as it is, pristine, because nobody wants to see a couple of two old guys running around going, IVD5W. It's like, I don't want to see that. That's embarrassing. So it's like catching lightning in a bottle. You can't do it. No. So just leave it alone. Let it be its own, because all we could do is screw it up if we went back and did anything.
Well, see, you're very humble and you're looking at it as an actor from an actor's perspective, because there's so many fans, and we've been getting a lot of messages, and they're basically saying Emergency is a show that cannot be remade. How would you feel if it was remade? Because, they done made a movie a long time ago, Dan Aykroyd, of Dragnet, and that was Jack Webb's production. What would you do if they remade Emergency?
Well, I would sit just like you guys and watch it, and of course criticize it if it went off the page. But here's why I don't think it would happen, because what made, in my opinion, what made Emergency such a phenomenon at the time in the 1970s was the show was about paramedics. And when I first was told I was going to be playing Los Angeles County firefighter paramedic Johnny Gage, the first thing I said was, "What the hell's a paramedic?"
Yeah,
I had never heard of what a paramedic was before. Well, I quickly having to go and train to be a paramedic and working and training with the fire department. All of a sudden now I know what a paramedic is. Well, when the show first came on the air, nobody knew what a paramedic was. So this is a brand new concept, and everybody before 1968, 69, way before the show, when the paramedics actually were formed and became this idea and then became a practicality, if you got yourself hurt, had a heart attack, got into a car accident, or fell off your roof cleaning your gutters or whatever, there was no paramedic there. They would just throw you in the back of somebody's Buick or throw you in the back of some ambulance, and with no little or no advanced life-saving techniques learned by anybody, they just threw you into the back of an ambulance and got you to the hospital as quickly as they could. It was called scoop and run. Yeah. Well, now all of a sudden America looks up and they go, "Wait a minute, what? Firefighters are the eyes and ears of the doctor in the field? Is this true? This really happens?" Yes, it really does. It's happening in L.A., Seattle, and Miami, and in Columbus, Ohio as well. And America at that point went, "Wait a minute, that's what we want." So that's what glued America to the show at the time. But now we think it's written into the Constitution that we have to have a paramedic within 4 to 7 minutes of them falling down and hurting themselves. So the novelty or this new idea is missing. It's gone. It's not going to, it's not going to capture the conscience of the viewer anymore, because it's passé. It's like seeing another cop show. Yeah, okay, paramedics.
Right.
So right. I question whether anybody will ever really do it, because that element is gone. But it certainly was one of those new ideas that everybody just glommed onto at the time. And of course, it created a lot of new paramedics, a lot of new firefighters, because these kids were, Kevin and I always feel like we were the nation's babysitters at that time, because it's 8:00 Saturday night, the parents are out having dinner or whatever, and they're at home. So we were their babysitters from 8 to 9, and they were all looking at one another, going, "I want to be Roy DeSoto. I want to be Johnny Gage," and a lot of them were.
Wow, wow. Well, let me ask you, I mean, I know that the executive producer of the show was Jack Webb, and everybody here loves Dragnet and Adam 12 and all that kind of stuff. Can you...
I don't mean to correct you.
Uh-huh.
But
please.
The executive producer of the show was really Bob Senator, and he was the creator of the show. Jack owned the show. It was under his auspices that show, got on the air. But the real executive producer of the show for all 7 years was Robert A. Senator, and he was also the creator of the show and the writer of the show.
Oh, okay.
Do you think Jack Webb might have had any influence on the show? Because with my daughter being a new emergency fan, she kind of thought, and I didn't know whether to agree with her or not, she kind of thought that Robert Fuller's speech pattern was kind of almost like Jack Webb's in a way, and I don't know, like if he had any...
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Jack Webb had a huge hand in casting the show, and Jack Webb always loved those guys that talked like that. and Jack just was in love with Bob's voice, and Bob didn't really want to do the show because Bob always felt he was a cowboy, not a doctor.
Right.
But no, you're absolutely right. Jack Webb loved Bob Fuller's voice, and I too, I'm with your daughter on this. I think that was a big influence on Jack's decision to cast Bob Fuller.
Fantastic.
Well, I wanted to ask you, and I know, at least from what I've read, that you had a very special relationship with her. I, personally, being a fan of classic singers and torch singers and things like that, I'm a huge fan of Julie London's. What was it like working with her?
Well, God, it was wonderful. More so than I really think I can articulate. She was everybody's den mom. When she was on the set, she always would say, I'm not a lady, I'm a broad. And she was just the most wonderful, kind, funny, with a great droll sense of humor. And Kevin and I would spend a lot of time at their home, because Julie used to be married to Jack Webb, so she had 3 kids by Jack Webb. Then she got married to Bobby Troop. They had 3 kids, but Bobby Troop also had 3 kids in his previous marriage, so they had 9 kids.
Wow!
And Bobby would always, I'm sure you know this because it sounds like you guys have really done your homework. Bobby wrote the song Route 66.
Yes.
And I remember the most magical time. Kevin and I were up there at their house. It was late at night. It was after dinner. And all the kids were either running around or some were getting ready to go to bed, and some were sitting in the living room with us. And Bobby was tinkling on the piano, and he was always trying to get Julie to sing, and Julie just wouldn't sing after a while. She just quit. She would not sing. And I remember him tinkling on the piano, and I said, well, play Route 66. And as he was tinkling Route 66 on the piano, he was telling me how he wrote that song. How when he got out of the Marine Corps, he mustered out, I guess, in Chicago, and he decided, I'm going to L.A. And so he jumps in his car and he drives all the way from Chicago to L.A. on Route 66. And one night it was raining and the windshield wipers were clacking time, and he got that rhythm, and he started getting the song, and he started using the names of the towns that he was driving through. And I remember when he was telling me this, as he's playing it on the piano, just offhandedly, just kind of wasn't really playing it, he was just kind of tinkling. I remember going, this is a really big moment, Randy. Don't forget anything that's happening right now.
That's a great story. The thing about Julie McCall playing, Julie London, playing Dixie McCall, RN, her character was very together and very stern. But I guess in real life, Julie was a cut-up. Now, is it true that I've heard that, and this is great because I love people like this. I've been on sets. I know how it goes. Is she had a little bit of a potty mouth?
Well, I don't think that's accurate. I think how it's more accurate is that she talked like a truck driver.
Oh, okay.
Potty mouth doesn't come close to. I learned words from her I had never heard before, and I just she just absolutely both of them, and that's what would crack us up all the time. Whenever she would screw up or Bobby would screw up, the words that came out of their mouths, it was like, I mean, I was half the time I was on hands and knees just laughing my rear end off.
Wow.
Well, let me kind of ask you how you feel about this, because we've talked to a lot of actors, and of course an actor takes their role very seriously, and especially with something like Emergency, where, you know, you guys were changing the landscape of America, really, because of how many more paramedics and everything came to light because of that series. But also, we've been hearing from a lot of Emergency fans that did nothing but just think about you and your character Johnny Gage as the heartthrob that they just grew up just adoring and loving. How did you kind of deal with that admiration from women? Did it embarrass you? Did you think it took away from the seriousness of the series? Or
I mean, like, you were like in all the teen magazines and everything too, weren't you?
Yeah, and I sort of resented that to a certain degree. But, you know, as Bob Senator once said, if you want people to love you, you can't tell them how they can love you.
Yeah.
So
right.
I always wanted to be known as an actor first, and here I was in these teen magazines with these made up articles that I never said any of that stuff. They would call me and they'd say, would you give us an interview? And I'd say, no, I don't want to do an interview. And they said, well, okay, we're going to print the story anyway.
Oh,
we just thought we had asked, you know, and sure enough, they just made stuff up. And the more they would do that, the madder I got at them, and I just became entrenched. But you have to understand, I was shooting. Kevin and I were shooting like every day. So we really didn't have a life outside. So most of the girls that were approaching me were all like 13. So I really couldn't entertain that. And I literally, you would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. You'd be in your motorhome at 7, getting your makeup on, in front of the camera by 7:30, 8 o'clock. You're getting done at 10, 11 o'clock. You don't go out and party. You got to get up the next morning. So you go home, you look at the script, you go to bed, you do this every day. So I wasn't really exposed to as much as you might think I was until during the hiatus. Then all of a sudden, every hiatus when we would have 3 or 4 weeks off, then it began to dawn on us just how popular the show was.
Right.
Now, I don't think that I'm stupid. I knew that the fan mail was incredibly heavy, and I knew that TV Guide was printing up things like and the Nielsen ratings were high. So we knew that, but you don't feel it on a visceral level until all of a sudden you can't go into the supermarket and buy mayonnaise,
right.
without being inundated. So until you feel that, then I don't think you really realize just how popular the show got.
Well, the thing is, unless you were in a show like The Partridge Family, it didn't matter. But playing a civil servant, I guess it probably, did this irritate you? I guess they made you cut your hair.
Well, no, but I think you'll notice, yes, they did in the very beginning, but I think you'll notice as the years went by, my hair got longer.
I did notice that, and I was going to say, you managed to sneak it in.
I think there was 1 year that where I never combed my hair, and I took great pride in that. I mean, I don't take great pride in that now, but I remember being very, very proud that, hey, I haven't combed my hair in a year.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because I don't comb my hair either, and my daughter just gets on my butt for it all the time. And if it's good enough for Randolph Mantooth, it's good enough for me.
That's right.
So I wanted to ask you, one of the questions we got from, and I'll give her a little shout out. This is one of your fans. She is a huge fan of yours, not only from Emergency, but also from your work on soap operas and things like that. This question was submitted by Sarah Adams, and she was wanting to find out, how did it come about that you, Kevin Tighe, and Mike Norah were able to write or direct episodes of Emergency?
Because they got tired of listening to us complain.
They're like, you think you can do better? Go ahead.
Basically, yeah. Yeah, basically, yeah. They, we were just constantly hounding them. Finally, Bob Senator says, all right, for God's sake, now you'll see, and he was right. He says, now you'll see what it's like to work with actors. And after my first day, I went, actors, I could kill them.
Well, the thing about emergency, and it definitely followed the Jack Webb theory for success. There's several little stories within a show. It's a show with several stories in the show, to where there's different things, you're going on different calls. I'm always seeing you on top of a building or on top of a scaffolding and stuff. Now, how much of that, I don't know if you want to tell me, but because I don't want to destroy the legend of you, but how much of that was stuntmen, and how much of it did you have to do if you did any of it?
Well, in the beginning, because I get that question a lot. In the beginning, it was really look. If you can see our faces, that's us.
Okay, sure.
So if you can't see our faces, especially in the latter part of the season, it usually was a stuntman. But if you're up close, that's us doing it. Here was the deal. Here's how they got us to do it. And Bob Senator actually got angry one time because I almost got burned. And Bob Senator came down to the set, and he was so furious at the director. And he said he is never, ever to get that close to the fire again. Because apparently my pant leg caught on fire, and they had a lot of trouble getting it out. And I got singed a little bit, but it was no big deal. I certainly didn't think it was a big deal for him to, almost fire the director for it. And but here's how the directors got me to do it. They would, right in the very beginning. And remember, we were 20, 21 years old when the show first started, and we were 109 when it ended, or it felt like it anyway. But when we first started, they would say, "All right, here's what's going to happen. You guys are going to come in here, and then we're going to stop the camera, and then the stuntmen are going to climb that wall and rappel down this thing and then lift her up and pull her up because we know you guys can't do it." Well, you tell that to a 20, 21-year-old kid, and you go, "What? What do you mean? I can do that. You can? All right, well, show me. Roll it." And that's how they got us to do it, because we were young and dumb, and they hit us where it hurt, our pride. Then after a while, you do it year in and year out, and finally, I kept looking over at this guy that was supposed to be my stuntman, and he was always sitting in my chair. And I said, "Get your ass out of my chair and go do the stunt."
That's incredible. Well, the firemen, paramedics, they live that life every day, and they're great people. And the thing that I think that is so cool about you is you got like a special kinship with the firefighter. You look at it as an actor's perspective, but you also look at it as one of them, and you're actually thought of as one of them. Talk about your relationship with the real paramedics.
Well, God, the firefighters and paramedics, it's unfortunate today that basically they're kind of dividing themselves up. And I come from L.A. County, where if you're not a firefighter, you're not a paramedic, and if you're not a paramedic, you're not a firefighter. Right. Mm-hmm. That's not true in the rest of the country. There are some places where firefighters just don't want to be around paramedics, and paramedics just don't want to be around firefighters. And it's so odd for me because I grew up in the system where it started with the fire department, and then somehow it split. Firefighters just they back to their old mantra: we put out fires, we don't deliver babies. That's unfortunate. But my relationship with them, and I walk in both worlds as a firefighter and a paramedic, and I find it. I just am amazed at how that character so resonated with everybody. Mind you, I didn't know this at the time. I was just getting up and going to work like everybody else. So when I talk to firefighters and I talk to paramedics, and I do this every year. Like this last year, it was 25 speeches that I did for some are just firefighters alone, some are just paramedics, some are both. When I talk to them, you have to understand, to be a firefighter, to be a paramedic, it's in their DNA. They can't help but to do that job. When people are always saying, these guys are so brave, they'll run towards the fire. Well, yeah, they do, because it's in their DNA to do it. Right. It's not a conscious choice on their part. And thank God they are who they are. Thank God they do what they do. So my relationship with them is, I'm very protective of them. And if politicians or the community at large decides, hey, we're going to cut out a fire station, well, hey, why don't you just cut your nose off too?
Right.
Why are you doing that? These guys lay their lives or are capable and are totally willing to lay down their life for you. And all they want is to be able to do their job and to have some sort of security in doing it. And that's what we all want in life. And I can't think of a more noble profession than being the firefighter. And I can't think of a more noble profession than being a firefighter paramedic.
Absolutely.
And I want to mention too, because you'd probably be too humble to mention this, to show about the two things that meant so much to you. And of course, one is the firefighter paramedic. And I'm very sorry that your mother passed away this year, according to my research. And according to my research, you gave a donation to the Los Angeles County Fire Museum in her name.
Yes, yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate what you just said. Yeah, thank you.
I mean, what did your mom think about your role on Emergency?
She was very excited. She, I could have been doing Dukes of Hazzard. It wouldn't have mattered to her. as long as, not that there's anything wrong with the show Dukes of Hazzard. And please don't, don't nail me to the cross for that one. But my mom was just proud of anything that I did. But it was, I must say there were a few times these past 4, 5, 10 years where my mom has had to call the paramedics, and my mom never failed to say, she would always point at the picture, because my picture would be on the piano or someplace, and hopefully they all went, whoa, really? Whoa, hey, boys, this is Johnny Gage's mom here. We got to, treat her right.
Well, I would hope so, because I doubt very much if Jack Webb ever got a speeding ticket, so I think they'd probably give your family good service. I don't know.
Well, I wanted to ask you about a little bit about some of your advocacy work, and mainly I wanted you to tell our audience about Project 51. I understand that's a nonprofit organization that supports the emergency responders and things like that, as well as celebrating the legacy of Emergency. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, yeah. It really doesn't exist right now. It existed for about 2 or 3 years, and it was when the Smithsonian Museum of American History wanted to take a lot of the props and a lot of the costumes and everything and put them in the Smithsonian, which was probably the greatest honor I think I've ever had. And they didn't want it in the entertainment section; they wanted it in the public service section, which that made me even more proud. And so we formed Project 51. And we did a 10-city tour with the squad. And by the way, there was only one squad. There was no doubles. There was only one squad. We took that squad to 10 cities all the way back to Washington, D.C. And all the money that we raised for that whole 10-city tour, that went to a burn center for kids, children's burn center. And I don't know. There's nothing that will affect a firefighter or a paramedic more than they can be pretty stoic around some pretty brutal things, but I've watched them crumble when you see a child hurt,
right?
And particularly when you see a child burned. That is something that, if you've ever seen it, it never leaves your psyche. It affects you in such a profound way. And we just felt that money should go to them, and it was really the firefighters who said, "Yeah, let's do it there. We don't want the money. That's what's so great about firefighters. We don't want the money. Let's do it for them." So maybe we should revise and bring Project 51 back, because it's been 10 years since we did that, and everybody still talks about it. And so I'm thinking, maybe we should just bring it back up and revitalize it and see what good we can do by raising money for, and maybe spread it out for other victims of catastrophic events.
Right. Well, to this day, you still speak at firefighter functions and advocacy for that. What's some of the other kind of speaking events that you do?
Well, I sort of, I hate to call myself a spokesperson, but I'm working with the IFF, the International Federation of Firefighters, the union, and we teach a class, a 3.5-hour class, on the dangers of carbon monoxide poisoning to firefighters. There's no profession on earth that is more exposed to smoke and carbon monoxide and cyanide and all the other, and hydrogen cyanide. There's no profession on earth that's more exposed to it on a daily basis than a firefighter. Mm-hmm. But firefighters would rather save your life than save their own. They can be bullheaded, they can be ornery, and my whole goal is to get them to save their own lives. When you read about a 49-year-old firefighter having a heart attack, you go, whoa, wait a minute, there's something wrong with that. And more, the science is showing that it is the constant exposure to smoke inhalation, either on a low level over a long period of time, or we all know that CO can kill you, drop you to your knees just right now, and kill you dead. But it's the low level smoke that is the most insidious. The low level exposure to these very bad air that is weakening the heart. And we teach this class. I mostly speak on a motivational level, and then the guy that works with me, he teaches a class on rehab and the importance of keeping our firefighters healthy.
Well, I remember them teaching mouth to mouth in school, and like other kids wanted to do it. I was thinking if you'd have been teaching that class, there'd probably been a lot more girls that would have been willing to take it. Now, you actually took all the EMT training, and you guys got to a point, you and Kevin got to a point to where you did everything but take the final test, right?
Yep. Pretty much. Thank God we didn't have to do that. I mean, I went into that with my heels firmly planted into the dirt. I was like, whoa, wait a minute, I'm an actor. I'm not a paramedic, and they said, shut up. Look who signs your checks. All right, yeah, all right.
I was laughing. I was laughing at a line that I read online where you said, well, I've taken all this training, but if I'm at a party and somebody has a heart attack, I'll be the first one to call 911.
Yeah. I got that 911 down. I'm not going to get involved. I could get sued that way.
Oh, you become so real. You become so real in people's lives. Were you ever anywhere to where something happened, and did somebody look to you and be like, okay, so what are you going to do?
Oh, it happens all the time. It happens all the time. And it happens with other paramedics. They said, you want to help me? No. I haven't done this in 30 years. Are you kidding me?
Wow.
Well, Go ahead.
I was on a plane. I have to tell you this. I was on a plane. My wife was sitting next to me. She was asleep. And all of a sudden, I see a stewardess, the flight attendant, running down the aisle. And I kind of thought, oh, that's odd. Running down the aisle? Somebody really wanted some coffee bad. Right. And I turned around, and I saw somebody laying down in the right in the aisleway there. And so I went back, and some other guy was at her head, and I bent down, and I thought, oh, God, I hope this guy knows what he's doing. And he looks up, and I was just leaving a conference, a firefighter paramedic conference, and I thought, I saw him there. Well, he was a flight paramedic, and he looks up, and he looks at me, and he goes, can you see if they've got an IV? So I turned around, and I went up, and I said, I thought this was a long shot, but I said, you don't happen to have an IV on the plane, do you? And she goes, yes. I went, you do? So I took it, and he goes, do you want to help? And I said, dude, I am not certified. You are. You do the IV. And so he did the IV, but later afterwards he said, do you know what that felt like? He said, here I am, a flight paramedic. I've been one for 12 years. He said, to look up and go, oh, my God, Johnny Gage is going to help me do an IV setup.
It had to be a crazy situation. Another person from the 70s I really liked was Bobby Sherman, and he became an EMT, a singer, actor Bobby Sherman.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, he had a situation where there was some lady that passed out, and she didn't even know he was there, and come to find out, he, resuscitated her, and she woke up, and it's Bobby Sherman, and she was probably had another heart attack. I mean, wow, that's a strange situation. We got another question from a fan here. Of all the different characters you played, if you were stuck in an elevator, which of your past characters would you turn to for help, like for guidance or knowledge? Johnny, Abraham, Alex, or James Lee Crown?
Well, it wouldn't be James Lee Crow. I'd probably get shot if I asked him anything. I love that character, by the way. I got to shoot a horse, which I talked him into. I said, can I shoot the horse? He said, no, you can't shoot the horse. I said, well, he's not on camera. And they went, well, that would really bring up the level of your villainous. So, but who would I turn to? Well, probably, if I were in any kind of physical danger, I'd probably turn to Johnny Gage, because even though he was a goofball, when that bell went off, he was a pretty capable guy.
Well, there you go. You know why there probably won't be an emergency reunion? I know, of course, Robert Fuller is gone now. Unfortunately, you did get to work with him again.
No, Bob Fuller is still alive.
Oh, he is.
Oh yeah. He's on a ranch. Like I said, he always thought he was a cowboy, even though he was born in Troy, New York. But he's got a ranch in Dallas, just north of Dallas. So he's retired. All he does is fishing shows now.
Oh, there you go.
Honest to God, I'd rather watch somebody's hair grow than watch that. I can't believe somebody would sit and watch 3 or 4 guys sitting around trying to catch bass and telling lies.
Well, I'm glad to find out that Robert still was. My information was wrong on that. But what I was getting at is you got to work with him again in an Andy Griffith project, right?
No, it was with Dick Van Dyke.
Oh, okay.
It was the murder or diagnosis murder.
There you
right.
go. There you
I
go.
got and that was fun because the director of the show was one of our old directors on Emergency.
Oh.
And somehow he went home and he found those 51 magnetized numbers, and he peeled it off of his den and put it on the side of one of the squads out there. And so we had Squad 51. It wasn't really the squad, but
cool.
One that looked like it. Squad 51, Bob Fuller, and me, and Kevin's daughter played the reporter.
Aww.
Well, go figure. Wow, that's fantastic. You've actually gotten to work with Kevin. I mean, you guys wrote a screenplay together at least, right?
Yeah, a couple of them. Nothing ever got done, but a couple of them. We're talking about going on stage. We haven't worked together since the show ended, and he was just down here about a week and a half ago, and I had just finished doing a play at Jeff Daniels Theater, the Purple Rose,
Mm-hmm.
and I said the director, the artistic director, Guy Sanville, wants us to, if we're going to be on stage for the first time, he wants it on his stage. So I gave him a script, and I said, read the script and tell me what you think. And when I talked to him the other day, I said, did you read the script? And he goes, no, but I'm going to read it as soon as I get home. Yeah, all right. So we'll see.
Well, in knowing that you've done so much stuff, I mean, between, acting with Emergency and other film and television and doing theater, I mean, you even, as you had mentioned, got to work with Don Knotts and Rue McClanahan on stage,
right.
And then doing soap operas. What would you say your favorite thing of all of that is? Which genre did you like the most?
Well, they're all different. And they all have their perks and they all have their bad things. I have to say, and a lot of people are always shocked when I say this. When I was doing that little soap, that show called Loving, it was a half-hour show that nobody watched, which I loved the fact that nobody actually watched it, but just enough people watched it that it would stay on the air. I remember this, and this was after Emergency. I remember I was in New York, and at the time I was single because I was divorced at the time. So I was single, and I remember one morning swinging my legs out of bed, looking down at my feet, and going, "Oh my God!" And they're paying me to do this. And I just literally would skip to work. I mean, I was working with beautiful women. I was only doing a half-hour show. I was making a lot of money. I was in New York, back where I started my whole entire career. I was single. I never had so much fun. Although I got so sick and tired of just saying words.
Mm-hmm.
You know, after a while, you can only just say so many words. I mean, people who do soaps for 20 years, God bless them. Give them a medal, because I don't think I could do that. I did that like for 9 years. I was I didn't do it for 9 years, but close. I was close, and that was about all I could do. But I never had so much fun. But now, Emergency was a totally different animal. It was a very physical show. The camaraderie on the show was so intense. I met my best friend in the world, Kevin Ty, and both of us, we had nothing in common when we first met. In fact, I thought to myself, oh my God, I'm going to get stuck with this guy for the next 13 shows or whatever. But then all of a sudden he became my best friend, and that show, I just had a blast doing that show. But I have to say, when I was doing this soap, I just had a blast doing that. And when I did The Seekers, I think, as an actor, I think that was my favorite thing I've ever done, was The Seekers. Outside of this play that I just finished doing, Superior Donuts, at the Purple Rose, at Jeff Daniels' Purple Rose Theater. You know, it's hard for me to equate it. It's like, you know, guys, it's like this. You guys sound pretty young. Do you have any kids?
Well, I'm glad you think I'm young. I'm like 58. I'm not too young, but yeah, my kid's right next to me, and
I'm 30.
Just
Okay.
turned 30. Yes, wow.
And okay, how many kids do you have?
Just me.
Just her.
Oh, okay.
I was too busy. I was too busy watching Emergency.
Well, if you had two kids, the first thing I'd say is, which is your favorite kid?
I better say the one sitting next to me.
That's kind of like how I feel
Right.
about what's my favorite. I can tell you a whole bunch of shows I didn't like doing and hated it, and wished I was any place but the shows that I really loved, I truly loved them from the bottom of my heart.
So now I have to ask, what's those shows you hated? I know you didn't like the cartoon.
No, you're not going to lead me down that alley. No,
well,
that alley has no end.
I know one thing about Emergency, and I've got to ask you this, because you guys were so true in portraying a firefighter. I've hung around fire stations, and they were friends of mine, and our friends of mine went to a lot of their pancake breakfasts and worked with the Shriners and worked with the paramedics and the firefighters. They're funny people, and there's a lot of jokes, and there's a lot of pranks, and we saw a lot of that in the show, but there had to have been a lot of stuff we didn't see in the show. So what kind of stuff went on? Because I know you guys had to be like putting a whoopee cushion in or somebody's rear end or something. You got to tell me.
Well, we were always messing around, but you know, that's just kind of youth. But you know, we had a real firefighter on the set. We're hanging around with firefighters. Their sense of humor was just as sick as ours, and so we would, you know, and there was always this kind of rivalry between me and Tim Donnelly, who played Chet. And I remember one time the whole crew. I don't even know how it started, but somehow he said that he could beat me in arm wrestling. And of course, you know, I wasn't going to let him get away with that. And I said, you can't beat me, blah, blah, blah. We went back and forth. And always deep down inside, I thought, you know, I think he could beat me in arm wrestling, but I couldn't back off of it. And so finally they said, okay, tomorrow at 10 o'clock, we're going to arm wrestle. You know, and so the whole crew all got around the table, and I was like, my heart was pounding. I thought, oh my God, I can't lose in front of everybody. And I'm sure he was thinking, oh my God, I can't lose in front of everybody. And we got into this thing, and we were struggling and pushing and pulling, and then finally I did beat him. And I thought, oh my God, I never thought that I could beat him. And it's that, I don't know whether we actually played. Well, wait a minute. I did do something very bad, Kevin. Kevin would be in the, I was always messing around more with Kevin than anybody, because he's my buddy, you know. But we shared the same motorhome, right? Mm-hmm. And so we had a driver there. His name was JJ. And we were like the Three Stooges half the time. And so Kevin was laying on the couch in the motorhome, sound asleep, when I came in from doing whatever I was doing, whatever scene I was shooting. And there he was, and he had his arm over his head, and he was sound asleep with his mouth open, and his teeth were showing. So I took this, I took the felt tip pen, and I blacked out one of his teeth. And, you know, because it was kind of dry, and so, and I really blacked it out pretty good, you know. And I'm laughing, and JJ's laughing, and I'm trying not to wake him up, and, you know, not to put too much pressure and everything. And then pretty soon the door knocks, and they said, "Kevin, you're up. You got to," you know. And so Kevin gets up, and JJ and I are just dying laughing because he has no idea he has a blacked out tooth. So he goes down there, and I go up, and I sit in the front of the motorhome with JJ, and we're watching now him walk up to the director, and everybody's surrounding him, and they're putting the last-minute makeup on him and everything. And then all of a sudden, I see him stop, and JJ and I are really laughing. We're just laughing so hard. And all of a sudden, I see the entire group, all grouped around Kevin, they all turned and looked back at the motorhome, and I went, "Uh-oh, damn, this isn't going to be good." Well, they about never got that black off of his teeth, and of course that held up shooting, and of course then you know I got reported, and down comes Bob Senator going, "What are you doing? This cost us this amount of money." And I said, I'm sorry. And Kevin said, "And I still can't get this crap out of my teeth." So, yeah, I guess we were doing a lot of stuff.
You're lucky they just called him, because if they would have called, Jack Webb to come give you a speech, that would have been probably the worst punishment of all, because nobody can tolerate it. Wow. Well, it's so great that you're still working. I mean, you've done like Sons of Anarchy and Ghost Whisperer and Killer Holiday and everything with plays and TV shows and stuff and everything. How long do you plan on doing this? You're not going to retire anytime soon, are you?
You know, what I would really like is if I would go out either at the podium talking to firefighters, or when they go, action, Andy, action, and there I go. Right. I don't see me retiring. I really don't. What in the hell would I do?
Well, I don't know, because you didn't take that final EMT test, so wouldn't be none of that. Well, it's so great.
Just one little anecdote.
Absolutely.
Sure. It always kind of reminds me of my dad. My dad was a big dozer operator for the pipeline, and he just beat his body up working, with all this big equipment and everything. And he wanted to go up and do the last big pipeline, and that was in Alaska. And we all knew that wasn't going to happen. And it's both funny and it's sad. But he wanted to go up there, and I honestly thought that my dad wanted to go up there and die on the line, being a pipeliner. And before he could join up, the company said, "Well, you have to go get a physical." Well, my dad knew that he probably wasn't going to pass that, so he goes to the doctor, and the doctor said, "No." My dad's name was Buck. And he said, "No, Buck, you're not going to go up there." He said, "It's time for you to hang it up." He said, "It's time for you to retire." And my dad, it just still kind of breaks my heart when I tell the story. My dad said, "Well, what do you mean retire? What am I going to do?" And the doctor said, "Well, have you ever thought about painting?" And my dad thought for a minute, and he goes, "Houses?"
Wow. Well,
so
that's fantastic.
That's how I feel.
Right.
It's
Absolutely.
like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Well, it's so cool, and I almost had to know that with the last name of Mantooth that you had to be part American Indian, and you are. It's so cool that you were playing the role you were, because, for a while, Hollywood just had people, even who were part Indians, on horses and stuff. I mean, Robert Fuller's very aware of that. How do you feel about your Indian heritage? I mean, what does that mean to you to be part Indian?
Well, it's something that you don't really talk about because you are who you are. Mm-hmm. Because in actuality, my mother's German, and my dad's 3/4 Indian. So in actuality, I'm actually more German than I am American Indian. Mm-hmm. But being from a race isn't something that you want to put in everybody's face. You are who you are. You either go to the powwows, you do the dances, or you don't, or you stay, you talk with your relatives. It's just not something you wear on your sleeve. So, but I was never ashamed of what I was. Sure. I just never really promoted it, and nor did I. I didn't really have to, really. And Bob even wrote one of the shows where it shows that I was part Indian, and I said, I'm uncomfortable with that. And he said, okay, we'll back off of it. And I said, okay, I just don't want to go out there and parade myself around. It's like, do you put, somebody who is like an actor, say his name is McPherson, do you put him in a kilt?
Right.
For sure.
And I didn't want that either. But I always made darn sure that every show that I directed, there was an American Indian in that show.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, there you go. And definitely, like, the show, the one thing about the show that I was pointing out to my daughter last night, and maybe if they would have known that you were part American Indian, they wouldn't have picked on you so much. But while you guys were always heroes in the show, the people you had to deal with in the show, like, they were always causing you trouble. I mean, you would be working on a woman, and a husband would be harassing.
Crazy.
If I was you, I'd been just like, shut the hell up and sit down. You've always
been.
You know
something. There were times when I really wanted to say that, but they only let me say hell once. No, and I didn't even say hell. I said to hell. Yeah, I guess I did say to hell with your orders, and I hung up. That was one of the first times that they actually allowed a character on TV to say the word hell. Now it's not quite the same.
Right.
Yeah. What little TV shows there are, because there's nothing but reality shows now, and it's a shame that we don't have shows like Emergency. Yeah. It really is. Yeah. It's been such a great thing to have you on here. I mean, I grew up watching Emergency, and there never will be another show like that. I think it was probably the best. I believe there probably was other fireman shows, but I think it was probably the best, and it set the standard for the EMT today. Absolutely, I loved it. Thank you for being on.
Do you know why, in my opinion, my theory as to why that show held up for 7 years and it lasted now for like 30 years or so after its airing, and why other shows just don't make it. They'll be there for a year, maybe 2 years, But here's my theory, and it all stems back. I know you guys love Jack Webb and everything, yes. and I don't want to take anything away from him, but that show's success lands on one person's shoulders, and one person's shoulders alone, and his name is Robert A. Senator. Mm-hmm. And when this show first started, he told all the writers, you are not to make anything up. Every rescue we do on this show has to be a real rescue. You have to get it from somebody's log. It doesn't have to be L.A. County's log. It doesn't have to be L.A. City's log. It doesn't even have to be from California. But it's got to come from somebody's fire log. And you can change it, you can move it, you can turn it, you can do whatever you want with it. He said, but it's got to be a real rescue. If L.A. County doesn't have it, we don't have it. If L.A. County doesn't do it, we don't do it. If L.A. County doesn't use it, we won't use it. And he said, so those are your parameters. Well, the writers were so upset because they thought, you're tying our hands, oh my God, Well, after about a year reading these logs, they went, holy smokes, we couldn't make this stuff up.
Right.
Really?
And then at the end of 7 years, they all said this was the easiest job they ever had in their life.
Yeah.
The reason why, the audience is not dumb. They know innately when something's real. And they also know when something is made up. Mm-hmm. And every fire show that I've ever seen either turns it into a soap opera or they make stuff up and make it look so unrealistic that you just go, I don't believe this.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, with Johnny and Roy, you never went home with them. You never saw what his apartment looked like, if he was in an apartment or a house. You never saw Roy's wife and his 2 kids. You know, it was a procedural show. It was about the job. Mm-hmm. And the shows today are all just kind of, Hollywood just thinks that they can tell a better story. And honestly, in some cases they can. But in most cases, with this particular genre, they can't. There's nothing can tell a better story than the human condition itself. All you have to do is just put a mirror up to life and dramatize it, and it will hold its own.
Absolutely.
So if you and your partner from Emergency was in a wrestling match with Martin Milner and Kent McCord of Adam 12, who do you think would win?
Well, of course, Kevin and I would win.
Well, Randolph, it has been such
Really, because they're older than us.
Right. It's been such a pleasure having you on the show. I want to encourage everybody to check out your websites online. There's not only randolphmantooth.com, but also route51.com. And keep in touch anytime that you have another play coming up or anything in the future, even if it's a speaking engagement or something for charity. We would love to have you come back on to promote it.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you for that invitation. I really appreciate that. And Terry and Tiffany, you guys are great interviewers. This is a lot of fun.
Well, I appreciate it. Anytime we got something to promote yours, we'll do that. But if I have a heart attack, I guess I won't call you because you would say call 9.
You can call me, but there will be a call right behind that, too.
Fantastic.
All right. Well, thank you very much for being on the show, and happy early Thanksgiving to you and your family.
Thank you, Tiffany, and thank you, Terry.
Thank
All
you.
right. Have
Good
a
night.
wonderful evening.
Okay, good night now.
Bye-bye.